And then we are rolling. All right. Well, welcome everyone to the first conversation that I had with Heather. We're going to try to reenact the first conversation we ever had. It actually isn't the first conversation, but let's pretend like it is, okay?
Yeah, that's right.
And so everyone, this is Heather Campbell. She's coming to you live from Seattle, Washington, where she has been practicing law since 2002. Is that right?
Right.
Yeah, and you started an online legal coaching business in 2013. And yeah, you reached out to me on LinkedIn, which was great. I mean, it's really neat to sort of see, basically have someone like you who's using LinkedIn for the real reason LinkedIn exists, right? And so we discovered that we have, a lot in common through building our online businesses and through helping other people, specifically women and moms, achieve financial success. And so yeah, we had a really great, really juicy conversation, ripe with, tips and tricks and sort of just, exciting stuff. So I wanted to share her with all of you. And I guess, Heather, just maybe kind of fill in some of the gaps and let everybody know what you're all about.
Yeah. So like you mentioned, I graduated UW Law here in Seattle in 2002. Practiced primarily in business and real estate. I love, just from a personal perspective, I come from like a very entrepreneurial family. I was like a serial entrepreneur starting at a young age. Like I was the 5-year-old in the neighborhood, like getting paper routes and raking people's yards and, like seriously doing some, for a little kid, pretty entrepreneurial stuff. But I've always loved the world of business. And so I joke with people, I tell them, like, I really, truly am a business person that just happens to be in the law rather than the other way around.
Yeah.
So I love conversations about business. I love helping people be more successful in business. My shift from the traditional practice of law here in Seattle, which I still do, so it's not really a shift, but more of an expansion of what I do, changed when I became a mom. So I had my son in 2012. In 2013, shortly afterwards, was really re-examining the way that I could deliver my services, especially to a group of people that are not well served by the traditional legal world. So that tends to be this group that we've talked about, which are online entrepreneurs. You do get a lot of, there's a wide variety of people, and I serve both men and women in that space. But of course, I love helping moms and women grow their businesses. But there's a lot of things that people do wrong in the online world and in the business space generally for people that are in that niche of coaches, consultants, online educators, speakers, authors. Those are kind of my people. I should say those are my people that are served through my online business, the Legal Website Warrior. So that's, kind of the foray into that world was a combination of both wanting to deliver my services differently, having additional constraints on my time as a mom, and also knowing that there are people who are not well served by the traditional legal industry that need the information that I have, right? So
Yeah, that's, I guess, the thing that really struck me about you when we were first talking, just the fact that you understand that business is shifting and that business is changing as years go by, and it is becoming the world of online businesses. And so that means that, the people who are trained to sort of serve and protect business owners need to change as well. And you've completely embraced that and done that. One thing that we talked a bit about that I want to touch on, because this is something that I was nerding out on when I was writing my book, is, when you sell a product, be it an ebook, let's say, or an audiobook, and you're selling that product online, it's not a physical item, and you're selling it to people all around the world. How does the taxation work? What kind of sort of legal ramifications are there of selling something to someone in another country where their laws are different than ours and things like that? And that's something that I found really interesting. So if you don't mind kind of explaining a little bit about that and how that works, I think that would really help people.
Yeah. So, and just to be clear, taxation is a very specific issue within the law, and I'm not a tax
No.
attorney, right? But you're right. There are tax ramifications, and people do. I mean, it's really a case of people needing to understand where the majority of their audience is from, right? Making sure. So I work primarily with people who have U.S. based audiences, right? That tends to be most of my market.
Hmm.
Do some of those people also sell services in other areas of the world? Yes. Am I an expert on all of the tax laws of other areas? No. But
No.
if you had, for example, an audience and you're doing a lot of sales in the EU or in
Yeah.
Australia or whatever, you may have to become familiar with whether or not they impose taxes, which, and it's an evolving world.
Mhm.
There's not, I think, a lot of clear cut rules right now because the online world of business has evolved much more quickly than the traditional world of business.
Yeah.
The rules and laws are kind of struggling to keep up. They're attempting to, and we're seeing a lot of modifications in rules governing online business, like here in the
Mhm.
States. I can talk a lot about that,
Yeah.
but you would want to be careful about where you are doing business and whether or not certain taxes apply based on the fact that you are just having an online exchange with somebody who is a resident of another country, because you're right that there may be rules and
Yeah.
taxes apply that you're not aware of.
And yeah, and so being that I just launched my online course,
Mm-hmm.
as I'm launching it through the platform, it's got, you can add your own terms and conditions and
Yeah.
privacy policy and client agreements. And I literally left all of that blank. I'm like, I'll get Heather to help me with this eventually. But for now, I'm like, I don't know what to put in here. And I don't know. Yeah. So, I mean, and that's the thing. Everyone who starts an online business, I don't know, I wonder what percentage of them actually understand how to set up all of that sort of stuff. And so that's where you come in. And I think it's so cool that I met you, because I know so many people, like I was saying to you, and hopefully a few of my girlfriends are watching this right now, who also have online businesses, and they have some sort of virtual products for sale online, and they do a lot of virtual coaching and different things like that. So um, yeah, is there anything that you can kind of, I guess, say to everyone, or maybe tell a story about someone who's been through that, and what that looked like?
Absolutely. So there's a lot of moving parts that people don't think about when they launch an online business, product, program, etc. So I'm going to walk you through some. We can't cover everything in a short time. There's a lot of stuff that we could go
Yeah.
into, but everything from selecting a name, right? So even people buying domain names, selecting a name for the program or the service or the digital product. Even at that point, you should be thinking, I'm going to, for lack of a better phrase, with a legal brain. So what that means is when you select a name, select it with the possibility in your mind that it could become a signature thing that you are providing or selling, right? So a lot of people, their thinking is too small. They think like, I'm just going to put this thing together. I'm not going to research, for example, whether somebody else already owns the rights to this name or to this domain, right? Based on trademark rights, etc. And then they get in trouble because somebody has a business that is named that name or has already registered rights to that name on a national level, or maybe even on a state or local level if they're a local business. So even in the selecting of the name, there are some steps that you should go through, which include, just to be quick about it, doing a really extensive online search, right? Start with Google. Google the heck out of that name, variations of that name, see whether it already exists in the online world in some variation. And then depending on your locale, so I know you're in Canada, you would probably want to research, because I'm sure that Canadian laws on this are relatively similar to the US laws. We have similar legal systems, both based on British law.
Yeah.
But you would want to research whether or not there are local businesses with specific name rights within your province, right? So in the United States, on a state-by-state basis, you could register a local business name if you run, for example, a brick and mortar business that may not have national scope. So you might not find it in a national registry like the trademark register, but they could have local rights to it. So you want to research those local business names, right? And usually you can do that in a database run by the local government. So for example, in Washington State, there's a Washington State corporation search that you can do to research your name, right? And you have that state by state here in the States. And then you want to look at the national level. So does somebody, and this is where you may have to get help, and in Canada it might be the same, to run an adequate search through, for example, the trademark system that's run by the Canadian government or the US system. There's a basic search that you could do yourself. You have to look at, you know, the parameters of how you do it, but you really want to understand, does somebody already own the rights to that name? So let's do a client scenario. One of my clients started a program like, you know, 10 years ago, probably 7 years ago, became a signature program for this particular client. When they went to try to obtain trademark, like a trademark registration for this, the name of this program, a school in the middle of Arkansas already had the trademark registration.
Oh no.
Right? Just a small school, local based school, but they already had a federal so, and they're both in the education world. You couldn't get a trademark for that particular name. So it starts with selecting the name, right? But then when you get to the point of actually having a domain set up, or even if the program or service doesn't exist on its own domain, it exists on your business site, that's fine. You still want to research the name. But then you have the big issue of exposing your intellectual property, something that you probably put a lot of time into developing, right? Whether it's an ebook, whether it's an online course, whether it's a system that you're selling. I mean, people pour a ton of time into developing these things, and usually they have quite a bit of expertise in their background that contributed to this development. And they don't think about what happens once their intellectual property is out there running around in the world, right? And that's kind of what happens is you sell your course, you sell your ebook. There's a whole bunch of people now on the receiving end of this product or service or program that now have, you know, your IP.
Yeah.
And so from a business perspective, you know, you want to think about several things. One is that you need to put terms in place to protect your intellectual property. And what that looks like is licensing language that says, here's how you can use this thing that I'm selling to you, right? Here's what you can do with it. Here's what you can't do with it, right? So for lack of a better description, that's licensing language. So you need to have proper terms in place that let people know what they can do with it. The reason why that's so critical is, one, let's say you don't have any federal registrations even around copyright or trademark. If you have those contract terms in place, you can still pursue them for breach of contract if they go do something with your intellectual property, right? So even without a federal registration, a trademark registration or copyright, terms really provide you quite a bit of upfront protection if you have them done right.
That's interesting, because I was always like, well, what's the difference between copyright and terms and conditions? And what's the perk to having one or the other? Do you have to have both? So that really answers that question.
Yeah, and they're different. That's a great question that you ask, because some people say, well, if I put terms in place, then do I need to go get a trademark? You know, the answer could be yes, depending on what you want to do with this information, depending on whether you want exclusive rights to the name of your business or your program, etc. So there's a lot more analysis that goes into whether you need additional layers. They all do different things, and they all work together cohesively if you have them all, but they don't exist in the same place. Just because you have terms doesn't mean that you don't need to do the other things. It's just, think of it as like layering different levels of protection and filling different gaps. They do, you know, different things. Trademarks and copyrights are really about establishing your place in the marketplace. So let's say you put a workbook together, like you're a financial expert, and let's say you build a workbook that goes along with your program. That workbook, right? If you didn't want anybody to take that and duplicate it, you would want to go obtain a copyright on that workbook. Now in Canada, I don't think you actually have to have a formal registration for copyright. Your system's a little bit different than the US. The US, you would want to go actually obtain a registration, copyright registration for that workbook, which means that workbook in that form is protected, is copyrighted. You own the copyrights to something in either country at the moment that you create it, that you put something, a thought or a vision or something down onto paper and it actually takes form, right? You actually have copyrights as the person that created that. But a formal registration in the United States gives you additional advantages around pursuing infringement cases, right? So if you had to pursue somebody for violating your copyright, then you could get attorney's fees, you could get additional damages. It has additional levels of protection. But it does something different than the terms and conditions that we talked about, right? They're different. They're, different mechanisms for enforcing your rights. A trademark, and the same is true in Canada, a trademark is around, rather than the body of work, the actual creation, a trademark protects short phrases or names or titles, right? So trademarks are distinct from copyrights. Copyrights protect the actual creation, your expression of that idea. Trademarks protect a short phrase, a business name. Think of Nike, just do it, right? So taglines, we recognize a lot of the big businesses that have those. That's what a trademark registration protects.
Yeah, and I love how you said, start your business like it's gonna be huge and just go straight to that level. And we were originally trying to put this conversation on a webinar platform. We were gonna have a poll up, but I wanna mention it anyways. I want to know from people who are watching this, who are considering starting an online business, who have a great idea or a product or whatever. I want to know what the number one thing is that's holding you back. And, if it's time or if it's money or if it's just literally that you don't know where to start, you don't know how to do it. So I suspect it's one of those three things. So please reach out to us. It's calling me while I'm going live on Facebook. So that's weird. I would have assumed my phone would have just rejected that call. Please comment below this video and let us know, or reach out to Heather or I and let us know what it is that's holding you back, because it is a bit overwhelming, and but really it just comes down to, like I was saying in my most recent YouTube video, you just have to manifest that goal. You have to put it out there and tell people, this is what I'm going to do. And you don't have to know how you're going to do it. And you don't have to expect that it's going to be perfect. My online workshop, oh my gosh, like a series of hiccups. It's still not 100%, where it needs to be. But at the same time, every day that goes by, I'm ironing out more of the kinks. And for instance, you and we tried to hold a webinar today, and now we're going with plan B. We're on Zoom because we couldn't do webinar work.
No, you make such an important point. Progress over perfection. One, just as far as like being in business and doing business, like progress is so much more important than perfection. But two, I know that in our initial discussion, like this whole, like what keeps you back from launching something into the world, you mentioned that you've had discussions with a lot of people that are just afraid of putting their ideas out there because they will get taken. They don't want to, have like something they've worked so hard to build get borrowed or taken or used by other people in a way that they can't control. And, my response to that is, like anything else in business, it's really a puzzle piece. And I like the part of just like, tell people what you want to do, plan to do it, and solutions will appear, meaning that business is always about putting these puzzle pieces in place to fill the gaps. And we're always going to have a few gaps. So it's just the nature of an evolving business.
Yes.
But the part that I don't want people to be afraid of is putting their ideas and their material and their amazing content into the world, because they're so afraid that it's going to be taken or used by somebody else. My response to that is just learn the basics. Some of what we're talking about today is what I include in that, is learn the basics of what it takes to protect your business. And do what you can to get those in place so that you can at least rest easy knowing that you've done what you can based on your current stage of business. So if you're in the online world, right, you have your online legal documentation in place, your terms and conditions, your privacy policy. If you're selling something, you have your terms of purchase in place that protects your IP from a contractual standpoint. It is most likely going to be required by a merchant account, right? Whoever's processing your payments.
Okay.
one of the first things they usually ask for is, where's your terms? Because you need to have a refund policy lined up. You need to have some additional items in there that will protect you from a transactional standpoint. If you get a refund request or a chargeback request where somebody goes straight to the bank. And I shared that article, which is one of the ways that we initially connected, right?
Yeah.
That what happens to small businesses when they get direct chargeback requests. Anyways, there's ways that you can prevent against some significant losses in business, including around your IP. And you just do it. You take those steps, you plug the things in, but don't let fear hold you back. Don't let your fear even of people taking your ideas hold you back. Because one, if you're good at business, you should just plan that people are going to try to take your stuff.
Yeah. And you should be flattered. And that's a sign that you're kicking ass, basically. Like,
well, and it is the reality. And yes, you should be flattered. And two, you should know what to do about it. That's where I'm in. So the funny thing is I'm not a super litigious person. I've spent plenty of time in litigation. I generally advise my client against it, like any of my clients. It's a big time and emotional suck in life, right? It takes a lot of energy to go through a battle. But if you're going to be in business, you do have to know your boundaries. You do have to know how to pursue people that violate those, because if you're good at what you do, you're going to have copycats. You're going to have, I spent a whole bunch of time this week sending communications to people who had stolen client content all over the web, stolen my own content, right?
Okay.
You want to see a mama bear come out, right? Freebies, like people who just try to take things from other people, like really get my back up.
Yeah.
Because it's just like people spend so much time building these things in their businesses to have somebody else come along and just swipe it.
Branded as their own and
branded as their own, plastered on their own Facebook page or their own website. And it happens every day. But you just, again, know the rules when you get started, know what you can do to plug in the pieces, do your best to get a plan in place to plug those pieces in and get going, and understand that there is a cost of doing business and a cost of exposure, which is that some people will try to take what you have. And the reality is you just keep evolving and do what you do, and, be first and best if you can, right?
Yeah.
That's all you can do, but don't let it keep you from being in business.
Yeah, that's great. And now everyone knows of Heather, and they know that they can reach out to Heather and ask for her expertise with helping getting whatever idea they have started, and making sure that, because I think that there's a fine line between being too mama bear about your ideas and your stuff, because I think that when you really have a desire to share your talents and abilities with the world, it's usually out of a place of just sharing, to make other people's lives better. And so that's kind of, but I'm completely on that side. So I'm really glad I met you, and I know I met you for a reason, because I need to protect my creation more. I have literally, very little in place. And part of me thinks, oh, well, would I ever really, say anything or do anything if someone tried to steal some of my work? I don't know, but I wouldn't really have a leg to stand on if I didn't put some of the checks and balances in place you're talking about. So I think that we have to find a balance between being giving and being protective of what we've created.
Oh, absolutely. And here's the reality is anybody who's really going to make it places in business, there's a lot of giving that goes on. So a huge portion of my business is providing just straight up education around what people need, so that they can get into a place of being ready to pull the trigger on putting the protections in place. But they don't know that they need that stuff until they've had some of the essential education, right? Yeah. So I'm very happy to help educate people on, like, here's what it takes to be in business and stay in business successfully, and then help them understand when they need to get those tools in place. So I totally agree with you on the giving part. Like, it's no fun to be in business if you're not a giver anyway. Yeah. But here's the big but, a lot of people cross my path that have a tremendously difficult time with boundaries, with saying, what would I do if somebody did something that really violated my business? Either from the perspective of, online content, just stealing stuff, Or maybe a client is just really pushing boundaries. Like
Yeah.
you enter into an initial agreement of what services you're going to provide, and then they come back to you with, well, I want X, Y, and Z,
Mm-hmm.
right? There's a lot of scope creep that happens also in the delivery of services, depending on what people do.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really so much about business boundaries is really just having the education ahead of time on what it takes to create strong business policies,
Mm-hmm.
what it is that your business actually does, and having a lot of clarity around each of your distinct services so that you can convey that clarity to your clients,
Mm-hmm.
right? So a lot of what I do as a person in the law is really, in some ways, it feels like a lot of business coaching, but from a legal perspective
Yeah.
around these things and how to have difficult conversations with people. We have lots of opportunities in business to be in
Yeah.
difficult conversations, as a growing business, because you have, anytime you get two people that come together on an idea or a transaction or service, if you don't have things written down, there's a ton of opportunity for people to have misunderstandings around what the actual engagement was.
Yes. I'm so happy I know you, Heather. I've just come through a really weird situation, and you're making me sort of realize that that yeah, like I guess I needed to go through that sort of crappy situation, because now that I'm hearing everything you're saying, I'm like, this is what I will do from now on. I will have terms and conditions in place, and some form of legal document, because it isn't just about what you're creating and putting out there to the world. It's when you collaborate with other like-minded individuals who are also business owners, and how do you not cross boundaries and so yeah, everything you're saying is really hitting home for me right now.
Well, and it's, here's what I enjoy about, I enjoy a lot of things about what I do, but one of the things that I most enjoy about what I do is helping people obtain that clarity around how to have discussions on difficult topics, how to put proper terms in place, because even, a side benefit of protecting your own business is protecting the relationship that you're creating by having proper contracts in place. Because, and I hate to say it this way, but anytime you go into a JV relationship, a potential business partnership, one of the best things you can do for the relationship, actually at the formation stage, is plan for the divorce.
Yes.
And it sounds weird to people, but it is like marriage. People never really enter into those things thinking about, like, well, what happens if it falls apart on the back end? But one of the best ways to protect that relationship is to actually plan for that, so that you're having those discussions early on of like, okay, what if this doesn't work out? How do we separate ways? Who owns what? Who pays for what? How do we dissolve this joint thing that we've created? Because once you have clarity around all of that, the process of actually engaging in business and then going through the life cycle of that program or product or joint effort becomes a lot easier if you know, if things go wrong, here's what we do. Here's how we handle it, right? So it's, but there's a lot of people, what I started to say is there's a lot of people that cross my path that are heart-centered people in what they're building and delivering and giving. And so they have tremendous difficulty with the part of business that I do, which is really creating boundaries, putting terms in place, creating a lot of clarity around what do I do if somebody essentially does me wrong, right? If somebody takes something from my business, pushes me too hard, asks for more than we originally contracted for, or whatever. There's all these ways that it happens. I help them, and part of what you're saying is sometimes we just learn through having hard experiences.
Yes.
With somebody where we go, okay, that was a red flag client, or what I call a red flag scenario. That's going to inform my business policies moving forward. Here's how I incorporate that experience into better contractual language so that I can use my business contracts to help educate my clients in a really helpful way around my business policies, so that it's better for everyone. It's better for the client, better for me, better for my business longevity.
Yeah, this is really great stuff. So thank you so much for sharing all of that.
Absolutely.
I don't know what time it is, but I feel like we probably just about hit our mark. So unfortunately I can't take any questions because we're not on the webinar platform today, but we'll redo another session after some people have watched this, and we will get some questions from people, We will,
Yeah.
do another session like this on a webinar platform where we
I know that works as once we get the kinks worked out. I know.
yeah, and it'll be great.
Um, well, and the thing is about your experience, Lyndsie, it's so typical. It's so like all of us have growing pains in our business where, we reach a new spot or a new thing that we're doing and suddenly all these new questions pop up or we have a tough experience and then we have to put things in place. So that's okay, right?
Yeah.
I want people to feel comfortable with exactly where they're at. Because in business, all we can do is as much as we can do right now, which is usually what people are doing. So like, don't worry about it. Wherever you are in business, like, don't worry about it. Just start plugging in the pieces that support your path and it'll evolve.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, I'm just really glad. And we'll post the link to Heather's article in the below this video too. You guys have to read that article because that is the article that made me say, wow, Heather, this is great. And then here we are. So this is, it's a great article. You have to read it.
We can post that link, the article, and then I've got a good link that will walk people through. It's an interactive tool that asks questions about what you're doing in your business and then lets you know kind of what legal tool you need in place to cover that aspect of your business. So a lot of people find that one really helpful as well. So I'm happy to share that with you if you also want to post that. That can help people walk through the specifics.
Absolutely. And where can people find you on Facebook and LinkedIn?
Yeah, so on Facebook, I am just / Heather Pierce Campbell is my business page, right? And then on LinkedIn, it's the same thing, LinkedIn /IN / Heather Pierce Campbell. So my full name, and Pierce is spelled Pearce. It's the more unusual spelling of Pierce. So that's where they can find me. And then my website, which is going to have those links as well, is legalwebsitewarrior.com. So all together, spelled exactly how it sounds.
Great. Well, thank you so much for taking the time away from your beautiful 3-month-old baby. Is she sleeping right now?
She's sleeping, although I'm hearing little sounds. A funny quick story on her.
Good timing.
In this phase of really resisting going down for naps by herself. She hates it. So sometimes I have to put her under the fan, our really loud fan on the stove. It's like the exhaust fan. Put her in her car seat so that she can't hear any other noise in the house because she wakes up really easily. So that's where she's sleeping, is in her car seat.
I wish I would have thought of that 11 years ago. Good for you.
Either that or the vacuum or driving in the car. Like anyway, that background noise, but I think she's waking up shortly.
Good. Well, we timed this perfectly. So thank you so much again. And
thank you. So good to talk with you again. Thank you for hosting this conversation. And I'll get the kinks worked out on that Webinar Ninja platform, which I've heard really good things about. And our test run yesterday, it seems to be shaking.
Yeah, it was really good. It's too bad they decided to change things on us.
I know.
One day that we.
Well, I think it's been in the works. I just think I didn't know that I logged into the older platform yesterday when we did our meeting. So, anyways, I'll try to get that sorted out. But it might be fun to do another one in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Live is done.
Yay.
And have a great day, Heather. And
hopefully that was helpful.
It was.